built my previous layout, I ran into lots of serious issues. Track popping up, things becoming misaligned, and benchwork warping. So this time, I've doubled down on doing everything as well as I can. Starting with the foundation, the benchwork. I've divided the railroad into distinct zones to represent regions in the new dystopian world. Zones 3 and 4, which represent Stewart Yard and West Harbor, are the two first regions that I've completed. I want to take a look at the steps that it took for me to get to that point. So I have been making some significant progress on my new benchwork, and I thought this would be a good time to pause and go over the thought process and the steps I took to get to this point. So for anyone who's new, I had an existing layout in this space. Within the year, I had track popping up and benchwork going astray, so I made the difficult decision to tear out the layout and start again. So after tearing out the layout, the first thing I did was I needed to repair all of the walls in the layout room because I needed to tear off the backdrop. And so I decided this time that I would just paint directly onto the walls. I filled all of the holes and imperfections and sanded the walls back to their original state. As I want this layout to have an ominous late October feel, I decided on this deep blue color, and I took this specifically from the color of the sky while I was driving one day. I used a flat interior latex paint, which because it has absolutely no shine to it, it does a really good job of hiding any imperfections, and the walls look very, very smooth. In general terms, this time around, I have decided to use a modular or semi-modular L-girder benchwork system. For those unfamiliar, L-girder benchwork is a method of constructing the foundation for a model railroad, and is typically valued for its flexibility and its strength. The foundation starts with the girders, which are long beams made by joining two pieces of wood, typically 1x2s or 1x4s, into an L-shaped cross-section. These girders act as the backbone of the structure. On top of the girders, joists are installed. Unlike other benchwork methods, the joists don't need to be at right angles or evenly spaced. Instead, they can be positioned exactly where they're needed to match the layout design. To the joists, risers are attached. These are vertical supports that create varying elevations for the sub-roadbed. This combination of girders, joists, and risers gives you the freedom to shape hills and valleys and overpasses, and makes it ideal for layouts that have complex terrain. The reason I'm calling this a modular L-girder benchwork system is because I have designed the layout so that every bit of benchwork is no longer than 7 feet. And each of those pieces of benchwork have been bolted together. And so this time around, I want to make sure that in the event that this layout ever has to move, I have a much easier time of taking it apart. I'm using 3/4 inch good one side fir plywood. Fir plywood has the advantages of being not only very durable and rigid and traditionally stronger than softwood plywoods, but additionally it's somewhat water resistant or moisture resistant. And as I had warpage in this room, I wanted to take every step I can to make sure that I don't have any more of those problems. What I've done for this benchwork system is I've also decided to have it freestanding or floating away from the walls. What I have is supporting plates at each of the major joints around the layout, and the layout is sitting on those. I will come up from below and put screws into the L-girders to secure them. In order to keep things flexible and adjustable, that I would use adjustable feet. I found these brackets on Amazon, and they mount really simply to the plywood legs, and you can adjust them up to 1.5 inches, which allows me to make height adjustments. Now, one of the additional reasons for using the L-girder system, it gives you a great deal of flexibility when you're adding your sub-roadbed. So your decking does not go directly onto the top of the girders. Your decking or sub-roadbed is supported above it. And that is done on top of joists. The advantage of this system is that depending upon where your sub-roadbed sits on top of this joist, you have the flexibility to move the joist exactly to where you need it in order to support that sub-roadbed. So now the next step from this point is that I'm now going to put the plywood sheeting on top of this, and I'm going to pin it in place so that I can rack each of the modules in place, and then I will start laying out my track plan onto that decking. Once the track plan has been transferred to the decking, I will take it off of the L-girders. I will cut the decking to suit, and then I'll start going back and adding the joists and supporting the decking on top. So this area is the most complicated for benchwork, and I'm just testing out some ideas using some scraps so that I can get the elevations correct, because there's a bridge crossing a bridge over a body of water. But while that's going on, I have cut some joists for this piece of the benchwork. The next thing I'll need to do is make cuts along my red lines, which will release the cookie cutter pattern, and then that's what I will place on top of the joist to support it. So before I go any further on working on the elevations on the layout, there is track at the back of this end module that is going to be very difficult to access. So I've decided to spin the baseboard around. I've put some cork down and I'm going to lay some track and some feeder wires. I'm going to spin it around and return it to its original position, and that way I can start working on the elevations. I don't intend on dismantling this layout, but in the event that I would need to move it, Zone 1 and Zone 2 are connected just through 2 bolted plates on the end of the L-girders, and each section where track is going to meet the next module, I have reinforced it with 3/4 inch plywood, so when the modules meet and mate together, I can bolt each of those so that hopefully there is never any movement between the modules. The next section that I'm working on is the most complicated section, and this would be Zone 2. This area has 2 bridges that cross over one another on top of a water feature. I've been working on fine-tuning the placement of the bridge abutments and the piers, and once I've arranged them in a pleasing manner, then I'll go ahead and start cutting each of the bridges. For me, this has been the most challenging piece of benchwork, but it's almost done. So I had to get the 2 elevations between the lower track and the upper track correct, and then I needed it to sweep in behind Zone 1, and this is where I've already laid some track. So before I put the upper deck on, I will need to extend the roadbed out to at least the abutment, and I'll need to lay track out to the abutment because I won't be able to reach that. So that's where things stand for Zones 3 and 4. The benchwork is 99% complete, and I'm ready to move on to Zones 1 and 2. I'm hopeful that the remaining areas of benchwork go quickly, and my goal is to have trains running early in the new year. In the meantime, I'm probably going to work on some kits and try some scratch building projects to give myself a bit of variety. And there's a fairly strong chance I'll be doing some live streaming in the new year. As always, thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.